All right. The Gun Geek is here on time. All right, man. I'm going to see how many people we can get, well, buddy, before I start here. Uh, uh, got my coffee, got everything. Well, Gun Geek, it looks like you're the only one. But I think the whole purpose of this is just people don't understand when it comes to these older milsurp guns, and how these things, be it these Carcano Vetterlis or even Springfield trapdoors, uh, have been repurposed once they became obsolete. And the thing that really sparked me to do this is a lot of people, hey, Joe, uh, I said, where did you get this Vetterli? Because the stuff coming out of Royal Tiger, I mean, the bores on all of that, anything I bought from Royal Tiger, I mean, the stuff was terrible. Okay. And, recommending using a cast bullet, these people kind of don't get it that unless that bore is pretty much clean, you are going to run into problems. Even though the ammunition is low pressure, um, a lead bullet, when it hits corrosion or pitting, is going to shave part of the bullet off and build up in the barrel. You know, it's much like people that, oh, black powder, I'm safe because black powder is low pressure. And I've heard of guys taking a pristine uh, 7184 Mauser, loading up 60 rounds of ammo with black powder using Bertram brass and the dies, and going to the range and just shooting away, probably using the cheapest gunpowder like Schutzen or that stuff Graf sells, uh, that leaves heavy fouling and residue in a rifle barrel. And the guy just kept firing it till the gun exploded on him. All right. So much for black powder being safe and low pressure and all that other fun crap. You have to think about what you're doing, okay? And loading these old antique guns with black powder is not just simply filling the case up to where the bullet holds it there and take the airspace out and, just go away like a normal gun. So the whole purpose of this question and answer period is to allow people to get out here. And, like I said, it's not as simple as everyone thinks it is. Somebody was asking me, well, why don't you just load the 6.5 millimeter cartridges with black powder? Well, that would be a disaster in itself. Um, and again, the guns, even when they were 10 millimeters, did use that bizarre form of smokeless powder, ballisticide or whatever. It's nitroglycerin soaked into nitrocelluloid, very early gunpowder, and these weapons fired that stuff. What the pressures are on it or anything, I have no idea. You know, um, what goes on? Did I get something mixed up on my slow mode or whatever? I don't know. For the comments, I had this. I still don't know how the hell to do stuff. I'm technology poor. But hopefully, I was trying to see some people, pop up here that have asked me questions about this. Oh, okay. All right. Thanks, Gunga. He's also my technical advisor. He helps me in the magic realm of computers and the internet. Uh, you know, I've known the fellow for years. But yeah, okay. So we got about 8 people. So hopefully, some of the people who were looking for questions and answers on this problem uh, would be here. So, what the issue is everyone kind of brings up with these Italian Vetterli conversions, are they safe to shoot? And you see a lot. I mean, at least 10, 20 videos where somebody takes a PPU cartridge, dumps out half the powder, puts the bullet back, and then fires them. Uh, so, yeah, you probably, and they do get away with it, okay? But there's factors that people aren't taking in here. Most of the factory PPU ammo is loaded with a 264 diameter bullet. Okay, so this bullet is way undersized to your groove diameter. So it will pass through the rifle with less pressure, maybe. The accuracy, now, if you got a real sharp rifling in your barrel, be it a Carcano or something, you can get halfway decent accuracy from the ammo. Okay, it's not what I'd like. I know you can get better using a correct diameter bullet, but for some people, that don't reload or don't really get in depth into this, it's satisfactory. But as we've seen with, and I've mentioned them in the video, and they haven't come back and said anything to me, so I guess they're not upset with it. The CNR um, channel there, the CNR Armory or whatever it is, they do a lot of stuff. Okay, that was 759. Yeah, there are several powders, but I don't even know if they make 4759 anymore. See, that's the problem. All right, and we got our other 314299s here. Great. That's the problem. A lot of these low key powders, which were kind of used as a substitute for black powder, they made them years ago before they had Trail Boss or whatever. I can of it over here. They've dropped a lot of them. And, you could run 4759, I think, straight in a trapdoor with an oversized lead bullet and make a real nice, accurate load with them. But like I said, you see the powders aren't made anymore. Yeah, for over a decade. Yes. So that's what I mean. It's, you can say, oh, well, I did that. I use this and I can tell you it's safe. But the stuff's no longer made. So what do you do? And how I came about the load is I just used an old Lyman manual for cast bullets. It still had load data for the Carcano. And I found something close to the weight. And come to find out from the start load, it's like one or two, starting going half a grain or, up. It's like one or two from the very start. And if you increase the same powder, the accuracy got to where it really sucked when you were getting that bullet traveling out of a 91 Carcano at a halfway decent speed. It really was inaccurate. I didn't get no accuracy out of it. So it was just something I found by mistake, very light, almost a squib load. Yeah, high all this and that. But the thing people don't realize is, okay, yeah, it's safe. It's not high pressure. And there are several other questions about this rifle that go on. And like going back to what I've seen people put up there. Okay, first trick that most people that really aren't into reloading is you dump half the powder out. Now there is a problem. And like I said, there's 197 different powders made there with different burn rates. There's a reason for this. And there is a problem of when you reduce a powder charge, a certain type of powder, not every powder. It depends on the burn rate and also the case, the shape of the cartridge, the case, and that. and how, what you're doing and the length of the barrel. There's multiple factors in here. But if you start to back a load off, even a little bit under the minimum, what happens is when the powder starts to burn, there's an insufficient amount of powder to get that bullet up to speed. Because you lower the powder, you lower the velocity of the bullet. This is timed, okay? So when the powder goes off with less powder in there, it doesn't get the bullet up to speed to get it out of the barrel in enough time. We're measuring it in milliseconds. So many milliseconds to get it out. And then that powder will drop, and that's calculated by the people who make ammunition. Then your pressure level will drop to a safe level. Or when you back off, and you can do it with a shotgun, trying to make a light shotgun load, going below the recommended minimums, creates a weird thing where the projectile doesn't leave the barrel fast enough to where when the powder, supposedly propels at a certain velocity and it's out of the barrel, then the pressure would rapidly drop off. This is done in a certain amount of time. Well, when you back the powder off, you increase the amount of time it takes for the bullet to do this, and it creates high pressure problems with less gunpowder. Then throw in the headspace problem, and it just compounds it more, along with a bore that's like a cheese grater, okay? And you got a recipe for disaster. The groove, the same on them like normal Carcano? Yes, they are. They're okay. So let's go to how they converted these things. They came up with a process. What you do is you take the barrel, and actually it was also to reline machine gun barrels. The British were looking into doing this. You bore the barrel out, and 10 millimeters generous, it's a big barrel. You bore it out, and they make these steps in there. And you cut a blank, and the blank is placed in there, probably pressed in. If you got a thousandths fit or something, good firm little press. But there's a small hole in the middle of this blank. And they show the shape. The shape is made so this thing will grip inside the original barrel that you had. You machine it out, not real thin, but thin enough. You get the blank in, there's a tiny hole in there. They take a hardened thing with like a wire pulling or whatever machine, and they drive this rod through that hole with this hardened ball-shaped thing on the end. And what that does is like hammer forging. When you hammer down or compress something, it's the exact opposite. It's pushing, and it's pushing the cylindrical thing out. And there's a succession of these balls. They don't do one big thing. It's probably thousandths at a time or half thousandths, and they run this through there. And what that does is take that piece of metal and expands it from the inside out, and that's what grips the bored out barrel. So now, once that's affixed into the barrel, the blank or the sleeve, then you would bore it out like a normal rifle. So yes, it has the same groove diameter, all that other fun stuff in the chamber. That's how that thing was made. And probably what they do, it's kind of like if you ever went and wanted to rebarrel an M1 Garand, okay, Numerich Arms or Gun Parts would sell you a brand new barrel. They made them for years. Actually, they sold them for years. Way back 20, 30 years ago, you could always get a brand new barrel. But the thing about the barrel is the chamber is short. It's not taken all the way through, okay, by say 10, 15 thousandths or something. Because what you have to do is when you replace the barrel, them splines on the end of the M1 Garand barrel that the front sight locks into, you have to time that. And how you would do that, if there's a little adjustment, if you had to ratchet it down more and it didn't line up, you take a little cut on the shoulder and then crank it in there, get the correct torque, and have it all set and ready. Okay, so the key of rebarreling it is lining up that spline. So the chamber is not finished. Now you got a gun that a cartridge won't close on. So what you would do is go and you take a chamber reamer, and with the Garand, it was probably one of the ones you got to pull through and just turn. And I've done it. It's just a few with a good sharp reamer. You take one or two turns, you let it cut a little bit, then you measure it with the headspace gauges, and then just keep doing it till you get it to headspace correctly. So I'm assuming that in this conversion process, first they get a barrel and they'll go and rifle and chamber it, probably short or something or whatever, because then they had to take the bolt, remachine the face of the bolt, cut down the firing pin, and do something there. And then once the bolt was modified for the gun, they would go and probably headspace it to the bolt by hand to finish it. That's what I'm assuming. Okay, sounds logical and makes sense. Well, the big problem is when these guns were sold years later, it was a common practice when they shipped them from Europe or whatever to the US, or I guess they also went up to Canada. They would remove the bolts from the bolt action rifles, pack all of them in a crate, throw all the bolts into a separate crate, and then that's how they arrived at whoever was buying it, and then were reassembled. I guess that was a picture somebody posted on Facebook when they brought this recent batch of Italian Carcano carbines in. There was a guy that worked somewhere in one of the places, and he was taking like little photos and showing you what was coming in before they go and engrave them and all that other stuff. And he showed one shipment of the carbines where they were all in this giant cardboard box, and all the bolts were out and came in a separate crate. Okay, so that is a standard practice. When you're mass producing something, and like I said, you got like plus or minus 5 to 10 thousandths or so on these guns. And I believe when the guns were originally manufactured, they were within tolerance, but when you pull the bolts out, put them back, there may be some variances. But like I said, I headspaced a bunch of 91 Carcanos with the headspace gauges, and rarely did I find one that was out of spec. Okay, maybe they close a little on the no-go gauge, but none of them completely went down. So you're talking a variance of 3 thousandths or so, which is not terrible. And also it depends on the erosion of the chamber too. But I've never found one that would totally close on a no-go gauge, even after I replaced bolts in some for a reason. Some were damaged or something, and even when I swapped them around, I really didn't find that big of a difference. Okay. So let's go back to the Vetterli conversions. So they converted these guns. In my opinion, I do not believe the Italians made a weapon that would fail. Yes, it was an emergency thing. They did this. And if the guns were that bad and that terrible, okay, they wouldn't have been kept around in service or whatever as they were from World War One. They were still finding these things in use in World War Two, and actually they were still in use in some far-flung provinces of Italy, okay, by constables or something like that. So they were still around for a while. They were kept in armories in these rural areas and stuff. And again, they may have been repurposed also, much like the American trapdoor rifle. Because if you read the history of the Springfield trapdoor, the last official order the U.S. government placed for that 4570 ammo was somewhere after 1900. And I forget the exact date, but it was long after the guns were out of service. And it was for the prison guard buckshot round, where if you read the books in that, there was a cartridge that had like 3 or 4 double-aught buckshot pellets in it with a charge of black powder, and they were issued to prison guards. And if you read the books on both the Italian Carcano, the 91s, and the old Vetterli guns and the original 10 millimeter ammo, the Italians also used a buckshot round and some sort of it was like a multi-sectional bullet or tube in there's a riot round or something that was kind of probably meant to be non-lethal or to wound more than to kill. And they did have ammunition for this. So I guess the reason they still had the carbines, police department had them, is they used them as tear gas launchers. They put some sort of grenade launcher thing on there and used to fire tear gas canisters. So that's why they used those old Carcanos, not so much as a rifle, but as a platform to launch tear gas for civilian purposes, law enforcement purposes. So my thinking is they never actually made the guns that were, let's see, I'm wondering if some got used by camp guards. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They probably were. If they were assigned to prison units, they'd use those multiple bullet loads in there. And I think they said that the Vetterli conversions were used by the Italians. They still found them in the 70s in these rural police arsenals, okay, and things like that, where I guess in the old days that was your non-lethal type of thing, okay, or riot or whatever, um, that was a non-lethal option in your law enforcement or whatever the hell was going on. But I don't believe that they would go to the trouble to manufacture a gun that would not work or work to a degree. And the other thing was, even though that these re-sleevings had like 35,000 round or something, it was less than the standard 60,000, was like half the barrel life, because I guess the steel that went in there wasn't quite the same type of steel as actually making a barrel out of it. But it could be, they said the reason they liked it, the process could be done about 4 times to the weapon. So even if you used it, you could do the re-sleeving thing again numerous times. So this was kind of an idea. Oh, ads. Let's skip the ads. All right. So that was kind of the idea of this. So just in my personal, I don't believe they manufacture all these things and they were faulty and would blow up and all this other stuff. Perhaps converted batteries got issues similar to. No. Rarely be fired. Well, that could be with any weapon. Okay. I remember going into the armory with the 82nd Airborne and looking, and they had an original M16 in there. He had one. And he said the reason they kept it is that one gun was really never used, and they just kept one to say they got an example of it. Sometimes guns don't get used. Soldiers carry them around. They might qualify on them. Like when we qualified in the military, we didn't bring the guns off the ship. We went to a range to qualify on the base, and we used the weapons that were there at the range, pistols, shotguns, all that other stuff. So when you have that practice, those guns get the shit wore out of them, because all they're used for is everyone to come through each group and qualify with them. Okay. And actually, the weapons on our ship, it could be 10 years and they may have never been fired. Okay. Rarely Do we have target practice off the ass end of the destroyer? And the only time they do that is because the gunner's mate chief doesn't want to take the out-of-date ammo off the ship. So they let everybody shoot it off into the ocean just to get rid of it. But yeah, guns like that issued, especially in peacetime, a lot of them don't get that much use. Okay. And everyone has their theory. Yes, they were issued to rear echelon, this and that, to where they didn't believe they would be used much. Well, what the hell is the purpose of making a gun that you didn't think would be used much? And here's the argument I have with that is once the war was finished, you will find these weapons, and I found several of them that have an added stamp, which is not an Italian stamp. They had rack numbers stamped on receivers, 246, something like that. So these firearms were used somewhere else after the war, okay? And were used for, they still were finding them in these far-flung places, in Africa or whatever, or the old colonies, the Italian colonies and that. They were still finding these weapons well into World War II. Meaning, if they were that horrible and that they blew up and couldn't handle the pressure, why would anybody be using them? I mean, yeah, you might have screwed somebody and gave them the guns. And again, the argument, well, they really didn't shoot them that much or were involved in a lot of combat. But I kind of don't believe they may wear out faster and they may break down quicker. But like when they did it on CNR Arsenal, the failure was not as catastrophic. What it was is while they were shooting it, they realized after 3 or 4 rounds, the bolt was getting difficult, and that's where they found a crack in the lugs. Okay. All right. They found that crack in the lugs. And I think it was from the overpressurization. Of course, nobody has standard military ammunition that is reliable. All the people I see trying to shoot any of that, half of it's hang fires, and then you can't actually gauge that because over all these years, the chemical breakdown of the powder could change the pressures and how the ammunition reacts. Twisted barrel shotguns, yeah. Yeah, that's true. They probably were substandard guns, okay? And like you said, corruption, like I said, they pulled a fast one on somebody and just gave them these guns that didn't work that well. But I can't believe they'd make it to where the thing would fail with 10 rounds. All right. Maybe over time, maybe 100 rounds you can get out of it, 200 rounds, which, yeah, in combat, you can do that in one day. But also, like I said, I believe they are handcrafted, and people are shooting these weapons after a period of almost 100 years, and they were given to other places. Like I said, the markings meant these weapons were issued to probably somebody other than the Italians. They got rack numbers on them, and they were used for whatever purposes, whether they were actually shot or used much or whatever. And then once they got to the scrap heap, they were all disassembled, sent here, and this creates the headspace problem. Okay, I don't believe they came out of the workshop with bad headspace. But the fact that they had to hand fit the things together after the conversion, if you start swapping bolts around and they're not serial numbered, okay, much like the Germans or some other countries, the bolts are not serial numbered to the gun. So you can't really tell. So this is a problem. That's why I said it's a compound problem. You can discuss whether or not they were in good shape or serviceable weapons, But then you got to take any other factors over time that all the bolts were pulled out of these damn things, and when they sent them over as scrap iron, they just slap bolts back in, which could create the ever persistent headspace problem. Okay, which was not the way the gun was originally when it was converted done. All right, see, so that's the thing. It's where this is. Curious where the 6.5 ammo Ethiopian went. I got some of their surplus. Well, the ammo was probably surplus ammo. You have to understand that ammunition from the date of manufacture, the standard military procedure is when it's manufactured, all ordnance, the hand grenades, all that other shit, 20 years. You put it in controlled storage, and for 20 years, it can set, okay, on the ship in a storage area or whatever for 20 years. After 20 years, that's why we used to get surplus ammo. The ammunition is no longer considered good and it is sold off or given away as aid or whatever. Okay, so that's why you see a lot of this stuff on the surplus market is well over 20 years old. Now, when the Italians stopped manufacturing the 6.5 military style ammo, I'm not quite sure, probably 50s, 60s, I can't tell because a lot of the stuff that came in as surplus, I believe, was leftover World War II supplies. They could have been manufactured at the end of the war, okay, say 45. So it wouldn't be bad until 65, okay, which that's still 60 years ago. So that 20 years, and then in the 60s and 70s, maybe they were bringing in these huge stockpiles of this ammo. And you still see, they still brought some 303 British ammo I've seen recently that was made by Winchester in 43. And somebody had a whole bunch of actual German made from the 40s ammunition recently also. So, you got to understand, even though it's sealed, and I did have some 1944 or something dated Russian ammo when that came in a Nagants, and I fired it and it all went off, you know. Um, so, it's hard to say. But some ammo I found, depending where it's stored or what happened to it, was really bad stuff. It had hang fires, it would do stuff. And I had ammo that I bought for my Hakim rifle from Egypt, the 8mm ammo, that for years I shot it. I bought it 35 years ago, and that ammo worked fine, but now I still got a couple hundred rounds of it left. And when I take it out now, I'm getting duds, misfires, So it will break down depending on the chemical makeup or what type of powder or whatever. Some of that stuff will break down in that 20 years or less. And some of it still goes off to this day after 70, 80 years now. All right, we know it's a colony. It's 33 Vetterlis. A lot of the conditions the rifle to begin with. Yes, that is a problem. All right, like this guy saying, yeah, there were secondary line of rifles, but the problems seem to be overblown. That's true. And another thing is the condition. I really have yet to find one of these guns in like a pristine mint condition. Some of them had the black Arsenal paint on them, which was a standard way of finishing some older guns. They just painted them with that black enamel stuff. I've never really seen one that was in really, really like mint condition. Okay, most of them are beat up. They have cosmoline in them. They have rust in them. And the problem that I'm telling people now is yes, the headspace problem. I think that's what did them in at CNR Arsenal is the two factors. They were backing off. I think he said he put a 75% charge in there. And I think that causes pressure spike. And they must have had a gun like the one I found. If you see the video where I headspaced them, one of them headspace is quite long. And I have shot it with the cast bullet. It doesn't screw the cases up or do anything weird other than it kind of vented some gas. And that's because the charge is so low, it's not expanding. The PSI isn't that high to fully expand the brass. And if your chamber is a little off, you'll get a little bit of blowback there. It's kind of like when you load down a revolver cartridge and you fire the revolver and you look and the cases have discoloration where they're not expanding. That is what a light charge will do. Okay, it gets the bullet out, especially out of a pistol with a 4-inch barrel. A bullet will get out because I believe like 314299 said, if you put a charge in there without powder, the primer alone can blow a bullet just about out of a short barrel and get it stuck in one a bit longer. That's how much power the primer has if you crimp the case with no powder charge on it. That is true. All right. Can surplus. Did they ever convert the Vetterli to an 8mm Mauser? Well, no. Why? The 6.5 Carcano is not that powerful of a cartridge to begin with. Okay. I'll use it in PSI. It only generates about 45,000 PSI. Okay. The actual military round. It is not a powerhouse. It is not super powerful cartridge as the 8mm. A lot of people argue that cutting the 91s, because you got to machine out the receiver, that they will not fire an 8mm and they're dangerous in that, but there are people that go out and if you're using US sporting ammo, it's way underloaded to begin with. Like the Remington cartridges, they are way underpowered. Now, if you put some stuff from Europe, somebody sold me a Yugoslavian Mauser and the guy had an assortment of ammo and he had some foreign made ammo and that stuff was more powerful than the damn military rounds. That thing recoiled in that gun pretty hard. So, any of these old military cartridges, if you put them in a modern gun that can handle the pressures, you can load them to a degree, be it the 6.5 Swede, the 8mm, or whatever, that are more powerful than what the military used. Okay. But then again, if you go to the Spanish Mausers, the 93s and that, you can shoot them at 308. And they've actually shot them when they converted them to 7.6, 7 point whatever the hell it is, 308 Winchester. They've actually shot the barrels out. That's how much they use them. They use them for training. So they fired them to the point where the barrels were worn because they were using those guns to qualify the guys. And that's what somebody that was familiar with the Spanish Army, those rifles were converted because they used I guess the Samit really didn't have a full power load either in that gun they used, that rifle. They would have the people use these old guns to qualify for marksmanship. In other words, train the guys to shoot and aim. And that's why I think they made them rifles that had the semi-automatic gun barrels and sights on there. That's how they use them. And they were put on 93 actions. So that's what those guns were used for. So no surplus rounds. Let's hope not. Tell it. snowing. I need a plow truck till the mom and I are trapped. Oh, so you got snowed in, Joe? Yeah, a lot of people are getting that problem. So, irregardless, however they come up, and like I said, then again, there are people that shoot these Vetterlis with factory ammo. There's several guys, and then like I said, maybe they're getting away with it because the PPU bullet is smaller and not engaging the rifling, and they fire the guns with the factory ammo without cutting it down, and they do it. There's several videos of people doing that. There was a guy I found that had one cut down that was firing it with the Hornady ammo. That's how long ago we made the video, when Hornady still made that ammo with that 160, and he fired the gun and it did not blow up on him. Okay. So obviously these weapons, if they're headspaced correctly, okay, can handle full strength factory loads. Would I do it personally? No. Okay. Because like I said, there may be a limit to that. There may be no harm whatsoever if the gun's headspace, but most people don't have the headspace gauges to check the headspace on their gun. Okay. Carbines, they're not pleasant to shoot. Okay, yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a difference between the 6.5. They were made at one time by somebody, but even the guy there, you got to take a 6.5 clip and cut it and modify it to get it to work. Well, first it was powder, now it's ice. Actually on a mountain. Right. Okay, neither have I. I didn't either. And I was shooting them with the cast bullet, my Vetterlis. I never headspaced them because I was shooting them with the cast bullet, never ran into a problem. So I didn't, when I got the headspace gauges, it's because I had a whole bunch of Carcanos and some of them I had to replace the bolts in. And that's why I got the headspace gauges. And I never thought until this problem came up and we started to look at it to headspace the old Vetterlis. I had like 5 or 6 of them at one time, and I've shot all of them without any issues. Okay. Okay, are you using jacketed bullet loads? Are you loading them down, or are you using factory off the shelf ammo? I think you told me that you use 5744, which is a good powder to do that with. Yeah, that's a way to go. That's a bit more expensive. I found the powder I was using, 2400. It's a cheaper load. See, I'm only getting 1400 out of mine. But the thing is, if I jack up the load to get it to go up to about 1700 or something, the accuracy's gone. Okay, this is just something I found. The accuracy's there, and I get a single digit on the extreme spread on a chronograph, where increasing the load in that was a lot. The extreme spread was out there in the 30s and stuff like that. It's just the way that particular powder works with the bullet. I've never tried 5744, okay, with that bullet, but probably I could work something up that works good. They must be plain twist also. No, I don't know. I think they're game twist, just like, because they didn't start making straight twist rifles until they had the 9142. Or are they? Yeah, they are game twist because that's the standard way they made them. What's your favorite grain round for 22 long rifle? Just about it's the ammo. However the grains vary. Never really paid attention to it. My favorite 22 long rifle ammo is the Remington green box. And then if you got a gun, semi-automatic that acts up, you use CCI mini mags, and that eliminates all your problems right there and then. It costs more, but your malfunctioning problems disappear magically. Now I got all you guys here, all 20 of you, but the problem that I'm running into is when I tell people that it's safe to fire the lead bullet load in the gun, I'm having these people with these Royal Tiger Vetterlis. Now, Royal Tiger, out of all the stuff I got from them, those 10 millimeters did have somewhat of a clean bore. None of them were rotted out. Okay, one had a loose barrel and was a piece of crap and the wrong bolt in it, but the barrel, was still good. A lot of the guns, be it the old Steyrs and that, I don't know what they've done to them. They must have just threw them in a pile out in an open shed because them bores are rotted out. And like one guy was telling me, counterbore the barrel. Well, you got like a 30-inch barrel, and more than half of it has this horrible corrosion in it. And a lot of the people that buy some of these guns from there will run a bore scope down, and you see it that there's no rifling. It's just a conglomeration of corrosion. There is no visible rifling. Okay. And a lot of people are buying these guns and they're saying, well, can I shoot that cast bullet in this gun? And the reason I wanted to have this chat is because I believe that's dangerous. What's going to happen, no matter how hard you cast the bullet, how hard the alloy is, it's still lead. Okay. And when you fire it down the barrel of any rifle fast enough to go 1,700 feet per second or even 1,400 feet per second, if it hits either that horrible corrosion or if it hits any type of pitting or roughness that is prevalent in a lot of those guns, it's going to scrape the lead off of the bullet. And with a gas check, it might tear that loose. Okay. And I'm trying to warn people, and the point of making this whole chat was, yes, the cartridge I'm suggesting and the one that Fanatic Almond 2 suggests, my experience with that powder is his load probably is nice low pressure. That's the way that powder works. I use it in all of the huge 40, 44 caliber, the antique. That's the powder I use in all of those guns. I get the bullets to go at a certain weight to match the ammo from what I find, how accurate the information is in cartridges of the world. And I've never had an old antique gun fail or get over pressurized using that powder. Okay, I've never used it in a smaller caliber. Okay, most of them are the 10.4, 11 millimeters, and that. So I believe that the load he's using and that powder will have the same effect as the one I had, but he uses jacketed bullets, I guess. Did he say that? Jacketed. Yep, he uses jacketed bullets, which that may be a project or something for me to work on, because that way when these psychopathic people who wish to fire it out of their Vetterlis may have a better chance of not blowing it up. Okay, my load has a GDR pressure estimation 25. Okay, 25K PSI. Okay, that I don't know how that converts into what we call PSI. Unless you double that with metric, that'd be 50,000 PSI. Got 20 pounds of varget and 2 pounds of forage for 40, 45 bucks a pound. Be willing. 40, 45 bucks a pound is not bad. 45, 55. That's about the going rate, you know. If you buy an 8-pound keg of something and divide it up, it comes out to about $48. That's about the going rate for powder. 140 grain jacketed bullet. Huh? All right, and you're using an undersized bullet also. Okay, I'm not. The cast bullet I send down that barrel is 270. I size them to 270. That's what gives me the accuracy. Okay. I don't shoot any 264s in any of the Carcanos. They're either 268s, if I can get them, or the cast bullet is 270. And that load will also, I had a 9124 carbine I thought was in nice shape. It looked like an average gun, and you look down the barrel, you could see rifling in that. It was just, and that's when I was mistaken and thought because of the conversion it wasn't accurate. But come to find out, as closer examination of it, the barrel was worn out. And no matter what you put in it, other than that cast bullet, I got a group that big with the cast bullet. It was just a worn out gun. And then when the other models of them came in, I had 2 or 3 examples, I believe. I think I still have them because of the variants of the bayonet lugs and all that other stuff. They shot way better, okay, because they weren't totally worn out, wiped out. Okay, still higher than the original black powder rounds. All right, yeah. Okay, that's the point I'm trying to say. You're looking at the PSI in the original black powder rounds. What was the PSI of the ammunition they last issued with the gun that was using ballistatite or whatever that stuff was? That was a smokeless powder. Okay, that's where everyone looks at. Originally, these guns used black powder, but they were issued ammunition that had smokeless powder in them. Some of these weapons did. Okay, that is the PSI that you have to find. And something tells me it's a tad bit higher than the black powder round. So that's why I believe they went forward with converting these guns. Okay. Oh, we got Rappin' Rodney here. Okay, what's the bore? What's the bore condition? To me, it doesn't matter where the guns come from. What is the condition of the bore? And see, again, you're using a jacketed bullet. Okay, a jacketed bullet will go down a barrel that is a little bit rough and not have an ill effect. Okay, but if you're firing a cast bullet in a bore that has some roughness or pitting, chances are it will start to accumulate lead and create a barrel obstruction. Because I have fired jacketed bullets in guns whose bores were not perfect and a little, there's rough spots in them and that. There is no ill effect. See, we're talking about 2 different things. So when you're telling me you're using a jacketed bullet In these guns you got from Royal Tiger, and maybe the bores are not 100%, and you don't have an ill effect. Yes, I agree with you. If I did the same thing, okay, there would be no problem. But firing a cast bullet that, number one, is 270 thousandths in diameter, so that bullet's already going to hug the grooves, okay? And when it goes down that barrel, if there's any imperfections, it's going to hit that spot and probably shave lead off, okay? And this will create a buildup, and this will create a problem. That's the point I'm trying to make, okay? We're not talking about the same thing, okay? Yes, I would shoot a jacketed bullet down a barrel that's a little rough and really would not worry about it, okay? But the thing is, if you take a way oversized lead bullet and fire it down that same barrel, you may have a problem, okay? That's kind of the reason I started this, to get the point across. Yeah, see, so, that answers that question too. There's no record, or nobody knows what, that stuff was made with nitroglycerin, for Christ's sakes. Because I got a couple original rounds and I pulled that stuff apart. And even after all those years, it was the 1890s or something, I think that head stamp was on there. I did that video. That stuff was still moist after all these years, sticky and gummy, them little blocks or whatever that stuff was. Okay, but see, I'm talking about some people, number one, don't have bore scopes, okay? And a couple guys out there have taken these guns and went down, and with Royal Tiger, that Vetterli, that whole bore was fine, but then there was a spot in there somewhere towards the chamber that when he put that bore scope in there, there was some heavy duty, nasty crap in there, okay? But I mean, the rest of the bore was pristine. You could see what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that you are doing something that is not safe. There are a lot of people out there that don't check the guns that closely. They just get the gun, say, hey, the bore's a little, I scrubbed it, whatever, and they want to go fire it. And they don't really put a little in-depth, look at it closer. Or they say, well, the bore's really good everywhere except this one area. Okay. That's the point I'm trying to make. I'm not criticizing anybody or accusing anyone of doing anything unsafe. Or if you have enough knowledge and do go down and check the bores and that's fine. It's just I get nervous when people don't do this and just shoot it down there without thinking. Okay. Yeah, well, that's the whole purpose. Technical, it's the whole purpose of this chat. Okay. Just curious, are you using gas check? Yes, I am. Gas checks are nice because when you see them, you get a square flat base. And even if there's inconsistency a little one way or the other, the base itself is what creates the accuracy. Plus a gas check, when it's in there going with the rifling, also kind of helps cut down on the leading. Okay. Yes. No. No. And the gun that wasn't headspace, no, it wasn't. The load does not generate. See, that's why you're kind of getting a blowback. It's not expanding the case fully. Okay. It's a very low powered load. All right. And like going back again, it depends on the powder you use. Some powders will not create a problem if you back them down. some powders, especially when we're talking about jacketed bullets in a rifle, if you back it down a certain percentage, okay, it may cause a problem. Because most people, when they do this thing where they dump half the powder out of PPU shell and put half the powder back, they don't have a catastrophic failure, at least they don't show it. When he took 25% or 20%, he tried to back it down to create a lower charge, then he got that weird effect of the high pressure, which will cause a high pressure incident. Because I was hand loading a recommended load. It's in the Hornady manual, ball powder or magnum primer. So like you start at the minimum charge. Then minimum charge loads in that rifle, when I fired it, would lock that bolt up where I had to take a rubber mallet and beat it back. That's how overpressured that undercharge was. Okay, and I made a video about it and I said not to do it. So I've had experience with that. I was within published data from Hornady, out of the Hornady reloading manual. And I ran into this weird effect and problem, and so did somebody else. Somebody sent me an email and he told me the same thing happened to him. Okay. So this is just from my experience. The only thing I can tell you, and that's why I kind of don't like ball powder. Ball powder has to be a certain charge and you have to get a good ignition and it burns differently than the stick powder. I like IMR powders. I've always liked them. I always did. I've always had good luck with them and consistency with them. Okay. That's just from my experience and my personal preference. All right, so you're saying you talked to the guy from CNR Arsenal and they were using 85 and 70% loads based was the standard load data. Okay. See, they didn't quite mention that. Okay, because most of these people I see do the dump the powder out, and I have no idea what PPU puts in there, and the powders in Europe are different than here. And if he was using the wrong powder, like I said, probably using that ball powder load or something, okay, that's where he ran into that problem. And see, yep, it is. It's tricky to use. Why don't you just clean your rifles? Whatever. I guess the powder they chose didn't. Yeah. Yes. So if you're using 5744, you're telling me the brass doesn't have at the very end of the neck just a little bit of discoloration. Because when I use it in the larger guns, depending on it, I do get a little bit of discolor because it's not expanding those cartridges out all the way. All right. Yeah, that's cause and effect. Yes. That's why depending on the powder, and not every single powder does that. Okay. But my experience firing a lot of them antique cartridges, even with 5744, you're not getting the expansion. Okay. 100%. Some do. I think when I get them up to speed, yeah, that goes away. It does seal. So I think you're right there. So I've done this with so many different things, I can't remember one from the other. But yes, that's the problem. And like the other thing, there's a lot of people, then when I ask them, they go, I want to reload for this, I want to reload for that. I always ask them, what is the bore condition? And none of the weapons that I had or used, any of the Vetterlis, all the bores were smooth all the way through with no rust or corrosion. Like I said, some of them rifles I got from Royal Tiger, I mean, the bores were real hit. You didn't want to fire anything down it. They're really, some of them are not safe to shoot. Okay. And that's where you got to use your judgment. Okay. And actually, one individual sent me a picture of the bore, his Vetterli, and it has some sort of a very weird in front of the chamber, which was a standard thing. If the gun wasn't clean, there's some corrosion and rust. But the rest of the bore, I mean, it's a long barrel. That thing is fine until you get to the one spot. Okay. And granted, if you're using a jacketed bullet, you could probably fire it without no problems. And a gun, who knows, once it gets past that spot, it may shoot fairly well. It can. Okay. Um, the thing I'm saying is, if you're going to use the cast bullet load, I recommend there's going to be problems unless you have a very nice bore all the way through. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Uh, and this is the message I'm trying to get out to some of these people that ask me these questions and send me these pictures and show me these things. You know, powder was small. H4895. That I haven't uh, used. Okay, and like I said, the only reason I use the powder I use is because I had it. I use it for a lot of pistol loads and some other stuff, 2400, and it just by mistake hit it. If I skipped the lower ends, I wouldn't have used that powder because the results were not good once you got the bullets up to speed, even being oversized. Okay, this is the issue. And really, there's no way to tell what will work one way or the other unless you go through them and experiment and step the loads up. Okay. And then again, like I said, not everybody is using the same bullet that I am using. Okay. So that's another thing. Yeah. Rod even used it. And good morning, Mill Surplus Duo. Well, that's another thing. I kind of gave up on the fillers and putting K-Poc or whatever down in there. Uh, because I found that when the ammunition gets jostled around, I had the powder get up over in front of the filler. Okay. And packing them with cream of wheat, then you got a bunch of inert stuff in your bore. Depending on reduced loads, that, detonation, they call it. Supposedly it is, if you lay the cartridge down and the powder is below the center line of the primer, they say it ignites it and causes a detonation and will cause a catastrophic failure. I've talked to several people that have used fillers, spacers, whatever, and did not use them, and no ill effect. So then again, I know that goes against the standard thing and whatever saying, but I gave up using fillers and stuffing some sort of a wad down in there, and I fired hundreds of rounds with no trouble. Not very gentle. It's published Max. Method for H95 reduced loads to take their published load and multiply by 0.6. Yeah, it's tough to say, It's just like I said, all right, we got 22 people here. Hopefully this is getting, but I don't see any names of the people who were asking me a lot of these questions. So uh, I don't know, but the discussion's been good. And yes, see that is a problem with all of this. However you adjust it, be it with the 6.5 or with any of the other old calibers. Okay, even a 4570. 4570, I've always had trouble loading with black powder of one sort and the other until I used the duplex load, and I did a video on it. And actually, that gave me the best accuracy in using the inexpensive powder from Graphs that leaves. There was a video I made where I fired 5 rounds through a 4570. I would run a patch and show you the buildup of the black powder. Okay, on the different types of black powder. And like the Schutzen or the stuff that Graph puts Schutzen, their label on Schutzen powder, that had the heaviest, thickest buildup in a cartridge gun. Then the other ones, Goex is probably the best all around, in my opinion, depending on what you're doing. And what was it, Goex? That one, and then Swiss powder, which all the guys that shoot these replica sharps and the black powder calibers, all that target shoot, go with the Schutzen powder. And Schutzen, when loaded, I loaded 50-70 rounds with Schutzen. Standard 450 grain bullet. I got 1,300 feet per second. It was accurate as hell at 50 yards. But when you touch that rifle off, that thing went off. And I didn't do this shit where the bullet was out. I compressed it down and made an actual cartridge with 70 grains of powder compressed down in there. And it replicated right to spec. Okay. But I mean, I had it in a rest. I had a 25-pound bag of shot in that red rest on the bench. And when I'd fire that rifle, me, the chair I was sitting in, the rifle, the rest, the 25-pound bag would bump back a 1/4 inch. Okay. So it was my experience there. American company needs to make me a drink. Gonna buy a Carcano M38 6.5. They're a nice gun. I like them. The M38s are the best Carcano probably all the way around, and the 6.5. 48.95. Max is 30 grains. Yeah. 140 grain. Are you sure it isn't? That's the minimum? Hodgson. I'd start running it, tell you the truth, with a chronograph. That's why the chronograph, they're like $100, but they're well worth it, because then you can see, because I've had published data not come even close to what they were saying the velocity was and everything else. okay, one way or the other. Sometimes it's usually too fast, but most of it doesn't really get that velocity there. So even published data is, you got to kind of feel it out for yourself. Yeah, I know they got their updated on the website. Google reduced. 48.95. I use that. Hold on a second. Let me check the numbers. It's not 48.95. What the hell is that powder I use? I used IMR 4350 in the 6.5 Dutch, and with a 160 grain bullet, using a torpedo bullet, Hornady torpedo bullet of 264, which works in that gun. I had a deadly load with that. I mean, really nice, not overpowered, and it wasn't a carbine. It was the long rifle, the 1895 Dutch long rifle. That some of those powders do work well, and they're not really hot or overpressurized. Okay, but yeah, that seems. See, I don't know. I've never fooled with the Hodgdon H powder. Yeah, see, like 31,499 is saying there is a difference, even though the number is the same. There's a difference. And when people say, "Well, I can't find," it's like what was it? One of the guys, Robert Graff, the 40. The hell I use in that one load, not 2,400. I can't remember numbers, and I don't want to say the wrong number. You will get an IMR number and an H Hodgdon number. They don't quite marry up, and I think it's somehow the powder's made. There's one process that makes the IMR powder, and the Hodgdon powder is made in a different manner. And I remember these people were on a forum going, "Well, what about this?" And he said, "I called the factory and they said just reduce whatever your IMR load is by 1 grain or something like that." It's, I don't know, because they were touting that if you took this powder, one powder, and it could replace Varga, and it does this and it does that. And a lot of these people said, "Oh, yeah, I've used it. I loaded it. I got good results." And there is one guy that said it does not perform the same or give the same performance as Varga, no matter how I adjusted or tried to work a load up with it. Okay. So a lot of this you got to kind of watch out for. You kind of got to play it by ear, and you just can't say, "Well, take this and do this with it." Okay, that's kind of dangerous advice. I have a few buddies messing with these Vetterlis, and the main issue is the old powders are discontinued. Yeah, well, I mean that's what we discussed that in the first part of the video about the older powders that kind of worked with low pressure and that are not there. So data's website. Reduce load. I have a few buddies. Okay. 2008 for 30 grains. Okay, and that's with a jacketed bullet. That's about what forget what the hell my jacketed bullet load is, like 2400. My Hodgin, man. All right, they ain't going over $2,000 with it. Would be interested to try 6 produce load. My guess is 12 to 1300. Yeah, see, that's where having a chronograph and stuff is critical when doing this stuff. You know. Well, reduce loads or whatever, and I don't know if anyone actually has any modern 6.5 Carcano load data. I mean, the stuff I'm getting out of is out of an old manual published in the 70s. Some other people, when I had that channel on MeWe, published or took pictures of other published load data from probably back in that time or somewhere. I've used 3031 in a Carcano quite today. 3031, you can use it. I tried it, and the accuracy ain't there. The burn rate. Okay, again, look, it's the size and the shape of the case. You kind of have to find something. I use that one IMR powder. It's no longer made for the 60 grain bullet. And 4198. Yeah, 4198. I've used that. That's the SR 4895 IMR I've used. And see, I really don't like saying it. You have to go and try to extrapolate some stuff and find something that works for you. Okay, but you have to understand to know when you're loading too hot or something ain't going right. You have to kind of gauge it, get a feel for it. I don't like giving people who are beginners or not familiar and I don't know their reloading habits. Usually when you get your high and your low, I start with some low charges, see what they do, and then everything is benched and set for accuracy 5 rounds and just go a half a grain. So if you said, where is it, reduced charges? Let me see what you guys said here. Be 18 grains. Max is 30 grains. The reduced load would only be 18. That's a very large difference. Okay. Max is 30. 18 in a thing, or reducing the load divided by 18 grains. I don't know about that. The best thing to do now, if you're shooting in a Carcano, a 91, start with the 30, you go 35 and then ease it up. But if you're looking for a load, I guess a reduced load for the Vetterli. Yeah, but what type of bullet were you firing in a 10.4 by 47? I use a heeled bullet. It's a custom-made bullet. And caster. Okay, when you're going with red dot, blue dot, or green dot, I found it goes by the caliber. Like 2400 in a 6.5 works fairly well. If it would work good, like say 30, 32 caliber, like you go to 8 millimeters. I found real good loads for a cast bullet and an 8 millimeter with like the green or red dot. You get accuracy, you get some good velocity out of them, and they're consistent. Okay. See, I kind of wouldn't use that in a larger antique caliber, like 10 or 11 millimeters. I wouldn't use that in there. But the shotgun powder does work well, like in an 8 millimeter Mauser, maybe even a 303 or the Gaunt rifle. I tried it once and let it up a barrel using 5744, and the load data I got was pushing that bullet way too fast. So that's why I kind of gave up on it in the smaller calibers. But yeah, the old reload manual data with the blue dots and red dots works good. See, like in a 43 Mauser, I think it's too fast. What is it? Herco? Yeah. Herco was a good powder for those old guns, but it's also no longer made. Okay, that was one. I seen it years ago, and then when I started getting into antique guns, I went to get some Herco, and I remember Rod telling me, "Hey man, try that." And when I went and looked for it, it's gone, so it's no longer made. And unfortunately, that's the problem. A lot of these powders went by the wayside because most people reload their hot rod in like 6.5 Creedmoor, 6 millimeter Creedmoor, and so that's a whole different class of weapons and a whole different class of cartridge, and you need a whole different thing of powder, different type of powder, and it doesn't matter whether they still make your powder or not. Finding it could be a problem. Well, all right, guys. I think I said my piece. I got this up so somebody can look at it if they have a question. I guess I have to talk to these people individually. But that was it. It's a good discussion. A lot of good information came up here about different things and that. A lot of nice powders mentioned. And hopefully I've achieved my goal why I wanted to have this discussion in the first place. But most of the people I'm talking to here in the discussion are experienced and know what the hell they're doing. So, all right. Okay, guys. Yep. It was a good chat. It's good to see you fellas again. And if send me a message or email or something, and maybe we can come up with another Sunday chat to talk about another topic or something else that would help us all out and have some fun. And it was always nice for your input, and I thank everybody. And have a nice weekend, fellas.